All right, hey everybody, how you doing? How's it going out there? All right, everybody having a good time? Everybody tired already? Raise your hand. Who's exhausted already? Trust me, I just raise your hand. Okay, good. See, that's the CES that I know and love. Well, welcome to the proceedings. This is a reboot of the Digital Hollywood Experience. If anybody who's been part of that over the many years, Victor Harwood back in action, and honored to be back into the mix and moderating this conversation, which I hope will be fun, and a little bit enlightening. Maybe a few tidbits of wisdom to impart, and maybe you'll learn a few things. We always try to make that sort of the goal of these things. My name is Tim Hanlon. I am the founder and CEO of a boutique investment advisory and consulting firm out of Chicago called the Verter Group. We focus on media and technology, that intersection, and was born about 9 years ago after an interesting career in the ad agency and media agency holding company space. So if you're familiar with agency holding companies like Publicis and Interpublic Group and stuff, I can tell you stories and then some. But the two last jobs in each of those places before founding Verter in Chicago was founding and running ventures practices. So a lot of leaning forward on where stuff is going still. It's really interesting to see. I've had a chance to go on the floor already to do some curating for some tours that I'm doing in the next couple of days, how some of the issues that we're going to be talking about are still out there, which actually may be a good thing because it may actually mean that there's more concrete reality coming to some of these visions that have been sort of out there for years and possibilities. I think if there's any theme thus far that I've been able to glean from this show thus far, it is tangibility. I mean, I think there's still some great visionary things out there, but I think you're going to see a lot of repeat ideas with a bit more business model concreteness, perhaps some reality checks on the actual implications and or how to go to market, which frankly is kind of what this is all about. I mean, half the show tends to be vaporware anyway. I think we'll see less vapor and more wear. But that's just a silly prediction of mine that nobody asked for. But let me sort of set the tone here. This conversation in inimitable Victor Harwood style is all over the place when it's described, right? Because all the panels sound like they're very similar. We wanted to specifically, whether he wrote it this way or not, focus on the realm of streaming, because obviously streaming is eating the world right now in media. But kind of focus on things around the distribution of such, right? Yes, advertising and the business models of all this are important and part of all this conversation. But it's really intriguing right now to see, quote unquote, television shows, quote unquote, movies, just content being available literally anywhere, anytime at the push of a button or two. And there's a whole business, right, that's being upended and or being recreated, shall we say, from sort of the legacy manners by which programs have been produced and distributed and consumed as streaming kind of takes hold and becomes the majority activity of those things, right? And consumers too are similarly bewildered by, okay, I want to watch that show, but it's the season number 2 and that's not on this platform, but it's over there. But can I record it over there? Did I already pay for it? There's all that kind of stuff. So we're going to kind of get into the weeds and I think a little bit behind the scenes of sort of how content is created and gets distributed in this crazy streaming world that has figured out some things, but hasn't figured out a whole bunch of other stuff. And we have a rock star panel here. These are people who are literally leading the charges in very important places. And if you don't know them already personally or their names, you certainly will know the places in which they're doing their business. And hopefully they'll have some definitive answers and some huge questions that we can kind of just stir on. So I'm going to start all the way at the end and have each of them introduce themselves. And I'm also going to ask them to kind of just give a quick little hint about sort of how you got to where you are, because it's not always like streaming itself. It's not sort of a straight line, and careers very similar in that regard too. So by all means, go ahead.
Thanks, Tim. My name's Takashi Nakano. I'm at Samsung. I run the content acquisition team for Samsung TV Plus. I've been at Samsung now for 6.5 years, and pretty much the start of TV Plus, I was, part of the extravaganza. It was originally started off as a transactional VOD store, surprisingly, and it morphed into this what we call now Fast. So it's exciting to see this business grow and change. And before this, I was on the traditional MVPD or a traditional cable network side. I was doing deals with the MVPDs, which is a
It's the only place to go. Right?
Yeah, it was a tough business then, and it's still a tough business today. So yeah, it was. I spent time at Discovery and Game Show Network, Pop, and Scripps. So a lot of smaller independent cable networks, and just transitioned. Samsung called and said, "Hey, we want to launch a virtual MVPD."
But legacy linear, so that'll be
legacy
we'll
linear.
Come back to that. That's so that's clearly important, right? But also maybe not important, right? Because it's not the same game, right?
Sure. Yep.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte Maines. I'm with Amazon. I look after the Fire TV business, so that includes advertising, monetization, engagement, and sales. And I've been at Amazon almost 10 years now, and I've had a couple of different roles at the company. But actually, my first job was the launch product manager for the first Fire TV. So to be able to have sold the very first device back in 2014, and then today be able to say that we have 150 million active devices is certainly gratifying to feel like you had some role in that, and it's just continued to get better, and we're really excited about the opportunity that we can continue to offer customers.
So, and how did you you've been there 10 years, but how did you get into Amazon in the first place?
Well, I went there from business school, and before business school, I was actually a real estate developer. And what I realized about that job is that I really love the project/product management aspect of it, sort of quarterbacking from finding that rough patch of dirt all the way 2 years later to having the fully stamped and approved plans ready to break ground. And so I translated the product management aspect to Fire TV. It actually not dissimilar, just very, very different product, with a little stop in business school along the way.
Just a little stop. It's not unimportant stuff. Ira, please.
Hi, I'm Ira Rubenstein. I'm the Chief Digital and Marketing Officer for PBS. I'm following two of my important partners here who are distributing our content. I oversee all of our digital distribution, broadcast operations, as well as all the marketing for PBS. And so that includes our distribution deals, our apps, and everything else. And then how I got here, I spent 20 years in purgatory in Hollywood. I like to say I'm now working for the good side of the force, public media, and spent time at Sony Pictures, where I developed the first theatrical marketing on the internet and built out the first movie downloading service, Movie Link, and put movies on cell phones prior to the iPhone, et cetera. Then spent some time at Marvel, launching digital comics, and then going back to Fox, and then back to, like I said, public media.
So
where I've been 8 years.
Content.
Content and technologies, kind of, and marketing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bethany Atchison at Vivo. I run our distribution partner management team, where we work with several of our partners on stage to grow our viewership on our FAST channels as well as our app. My background was not originally in marketing or media. I actually started as a high school art teacher. Recession, art budgets are cut, went back to school. Spent a few years agency side, really working across a bunch of different industries, felt a pull to entertainment, found that even if a piece of content wasn't my favorite, it was someone's favorite. And I loved the energy and the excitement that people felt around their different kinds of content. I moved to Showtime, where I ran their distributor media team for a few years. And now here I am at Vivo 2 years later.
Excellent. Last but not least, Stephen.
Thanks, Tim. Hi, I'm Stefan Van Ingen, and I run content strategy and acquisitions for Zumo and Zumo Play now, which just got announced.
We'll get to that.
But I've been at Zumo for 7 years, was the first content executive hired there when we had 0 channels. We now have close to 300. How I got here, I was actually really on the content and startup side. So I was the first producer at CSTV, College Sports Television, which became the CBS Sports Network. I sold to CBS in 2006.
I remember.
And went on to be an executive producer on a lot of different startup shows and networks. Launched the Gayle King Show for Oprah before Gayle went to CBS. And then sort of switched to digital a bit. And in the sort of 2012-ish age, Google actually started something called Made for Web, where they wanted to jumpstart this idea of channels on YouTube and well-lit streets on YouTube. And I worked for a startup media venture fund and production shop that actually produced a large amount of YouTube channels for Google to sort of trot out at upfronts for advertising and that sort of thing. And then from there went to Zumo.
So a lot of really important sort of stops in the backgrounds here that I wanted to sort of to bring out. And I want to kind of start with sort of the first question, which I think is kind of the most revelatory, and that is the form factor question. We're all dancing around our various places of employ. Some of you here are actual set manufacturers with now an operating system. Some are operating systems independent of the set or perhaps backwardly integrating, as Amazon and Roku now are doing, actually getting into the set, supposedly manufacturing component. Zumo is a really good example of sort of that evolution and homogenization with other parts of the business, as well as pure play content offerings that seek to be distributed in all these different places. I guess sort of the toss-up question is, how do you all keep up with the various form factors that are evolving? Because a lot of what we're describing that either you're distributing or that you are programming to be distributed seems like it may have different, forms, if you will. Some could be ad-supported. Some could be presented in linear fast channels. Some could be literally specifically only on subscription platforms, or maybe some of those subscription platforms actually have advertising as well. How do you keep up with sort of these form factors? And are there somebody's found something on the web, so congratulations. How do you monetize given all those different permutations? Because I got to think that that's got to be maddening from a lot of the places that you were previously, because it was pretty straightforward back in the day, and it's not so simple now. How do these form factors evolve for you all, and are these opportunities, or are they frightening things that keep you up at night?
I could jump in and just kick off the conversation, but look forward to hearing from these people who are smarter than me. I mean, it's really about just following where the audiences are, right? So, as you know, short form video was where the audiences were, and so it became really important to distribute short clips on Facebook and short clips on YouTube. And then YouTube changed its algorithm and said, we need longer form stuff. So it became really important to make longer form content. And you just sort of evolve with both the platform side and what the audiences are consuming. And then to your question about the monetization, I don't know that it's so different. There's different places it shows up. There's different ways that content can be monetized, but that's not that different. I mean, we had branded entertainment. You had integrations within shows, all the way back to when I was producing stuff. And you just had to sort of go, what does the audience want? What will they watch? How can I fit the advertiser into that, right? Or how can I find the monetization around that?
I guess, though, to my point, fast channels didn't exist 5-6 years ago, right? And all of a sudden,
yeah,
they're the new cable, right?
I think the challenge for public media speaking is, it's important for our producers to be able to monetize the content to fund it in the first place, because we don't fully fund our shows. The producers deficit fund it. And back in the day, they sold a DVD or a VHS tape and that was it. Well, now flash forward to today and you have these fast channels, you have SVOD channels, subscription video on demand, et cetera. So the question becomes, okay, how does public media best work in those environments and being true to our mission, which is non-commercial content? So we do have fast channels. We have some fast channels up on our partners up here. Some have ads, some don't. The kids channels doesn't have ads. And it's really about, as you were saying, following the audience, because the audience is on all these different platforms. And we want to make sure that public media stays relevant and in front and center of everyone, no matter what platform they choose to watch it on.
Yeah, I think just to pick up on the audience piece, being a little bit more vertically integrated, we have different solutions that we can offer customers. But again, it is about the customer. And I think in many ways, that is kind of what solves the complications that you're talking about. I mean, by no means truly solves, but it gives us that North Star we can work backwards from that I think is really helpful. So, partners are trying to find audiences. They have great content. We have an audience that wants to see great content. Great. How can we work together? And you can see the blueprint to a solution forming. So with a content forward UI, which is what we have on Fire TV, we are able to actually pull out pieces of content or help partners pull out pieces of content that might be more or less, more relevant to a specific user and get that in front of them rather than sort of relying on needing to get recognition for a specific app logo, if you will. And so a customer might start enjoying content in Zumo or Vivo without even realizing that's where it's coming from. Oh, but good news. Maybe you end up with a new subscriber or a new audience member, depending on where they're watching it from.
Kind of tying some of this together, I think a lot of it is a partnership. We work really closely with all of our platform partners to understand the unique audiences within each platform. We know things about people who are watching Vivo music videos, but they understand the nuances of their own audiences. So really taking those data points and being really thoughtful about how we're programming to them, how we're surfacing different content through marketing is important. And you mentioned relevance, which I think is so important too. Different content is relevant to different audiences on different platforms. So really leaning into all of that is key for what we do.
I mean, I think from the Samsung perspective, we have an interesting vantage point because we have devices in your pockets, on the wall, on the refrigerator, and a lot of different functions. And that form factor is a critical component of what the user wants to consume at that moment, right? So if it's short form video from Vivo, your mobile device may be an ideal platform. If it's lean back television, your 75-inch TV that's hanging from your wall is probably the best place to consume that. So it's work. I agree. It's with Bethany. It's working with the partners to create those different experiences with the content on these different form factors. So I think that's what's interesting from where we sit.
But what windowing matters, though, right? Windowing, let's inject a term here, right? The manner by which economics are extracted along the way of a piece of content being distributed, right? And consumers have now myriad choices in front of them by which to, in some cases, actually get that content in numerous places, maybe even through different financial models. So I guess the question I'm going to ask, and maybe inject a little consumerism in here, is content's got to get paid for, right? And we can talk about ad support versus subscription and all that kind of stuff. But the distribution environments, plural, kind of matter, right? I mean, we're now seeing streaming almost becoming first and maybe broadcast becoming maybe secondary, versus the other way around, where broadcast was first, then you catch up and watch later on. I guess there's a rationale from a distributor's point of view that there are higher order manners by which to get compensated than others, right? And you can't just sort of say, okay, wherever the consumer wants, because I'm assuming there's different models by which you get compensated. How do you keep up with that, and how do you maybe get multiple bites of the cherry if that's the case?
I mean, I think that is true, but at least from our experience, the best monetization mechanism is your largest screen on your television, right? It's got the highest CPMs. It's the longest engagement mechanism. It's from where we sit, the best place to engage. Now, are other form factors leading into that, bottom of the funnel, maybe that television experience? I think that's where, like Samsung TV Plus is interesting. We've got an experience on a desktop. We have an experience on a mobile device. We have experiences on a refrigerator. But when it collapses down into where do you monetize, it's your 75-inch TV in your living room.
But if I'm Vivo or PBS, and I don't want to put words in your mouths, but um, how the consumer is getting my stuff might actually matter a little bit more one way versus another way, correct?
Well, I think you kind of touched on it. We're in the middle of this transformation for all the broadcast entities of being where the apps were the catch-up device, where you missed it the night before, you catch up. And we're shifting to this kind of app-first digital experience where the broadcast is an addition to it. For us, broadcast is still very critical. We have over 300 local stations, all owned by different entities. Here in Vegas, for example, it's owned by the Las Vegas School District. If you're in San Francisco, it's a nonprofit. San Diego, it's a UC San Diego State example. And so each one has their own kind of different economics. But the point is that the stations matter. And viewers like you is very real. Most stations, half of their budget comes from viewers like you. So that matters. And that's why what we've been doing on the digital with our good friends here at Amazon Fire, we have built in donation into the Amazon wallet. And so when you're watching, you can say, yes, I'd like to support my public station. And the conversion rate on Amazon Fire from the donate page is 12%. And anyone's done any kind of donations out here, you know that's crazy, crazy high. And so I'm really optimistic in the future for public media as we talk with our friends at Samsung and others about how to integrate that kind of donation mechanism for public media. But that's how we monetize. So when you talk about engagement for others, I know that their business models, whether it be subscription or ads, that engagement is just so much easier. There's such a lower barrier there.
I'll come back from the platform side, and you mentioned windowing. So excluding PBS because they have a unique set of circumstances. But for a distributor that's looking and says, okay, this is going to be theatrical, then it's going to go to pay TV, then it's going to do this, then it's going to do that. And maybe not so long ago, the 7th or 8th window might have been Xumo or Samsung TV Plus or
free ad
supported
Yep.
streaming, right? But that's changed. So why is that changing, right? And we go back to the first set of answers. It's about the audience, right? Because now the audience is shifting and they're going to the largest screen in the house and they're coming to Xumo for the ease of no subscription, no sign up, no whatever. And now because you're the largest screen in the house, you can start with those higher CPMs. You can start to monetize that content and bump the other windows out. It's no longer so important to hold on to that for the airline window, right? Or whatever it may be. And you see that as these audiences shifted, that you see the platforms themselves starting to do exclusive content, exclusive first windows, original content for some people. So, but again, it comes back to, I think it comes back to where the audience is shifting to, then how can you monetize that? Then how can the content get paid for?
But if you're Vivo, you want to be kind of everywhere, right?
Exactly. I was going to say to your earlier comment about maybe not wanting to follow the consumer, we actually do. We have a pretty ubiquitous distribution strategy where we want to be Vivo and be there wherever you're watching your content. And there are nuances to what we have with Xumo, with Samsung, with Amazon, but we certainly want to make sure that we are available on as many platforms as possible. To what Stefan was saying about original content and windowing, we do have kind of a different windowing strategy to a traditional entertainment partner where we don't have a theatrical release and a home entertainment release, but we do see new content from new artists really blows up and then their whole catalog blows up. So we have a dedicated programming team that's keeping all of that really close to mind and surfacing all of this programming as it becomes relevant.
So let's talk about that, because this is one of the bullet points that we did discuss earlier in our previous conversation before the holidays, is sort of and I think, Stephanie, you're kind of hinting at it. So there's almost like, even though fast channels and streaming has only been kind of a real mainstream thing for 5-6 years or so, it's already maybe taken a leap or two in terms of sophistication. And perhaps you're hinting at one of them, which is there's this sort of innate ability to kind of curate, stand up either channels or offerings or aggregations of content based on situations, based on awards, based on the passings of certain celebrities, those kinds of things, where literally it becomes, talk about form factors, right? It becomes formless, or shall we say moldable clay, to create new, if you will, distributed products. It sounds like that's kind of what you've been doing with Vivo. And I'm sure all of you have kind of had an exercise or two in some of that, whether it's your screen or the content that you're surfacing or trying to put together because some major event happened and you want to be relevant to consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. We sorry to cut you off. We have 24/7 programming across 100 plus channels globally, and there isn't always a cultural event that we're programming around. So we have music videos that our team is curating all the time, but whenever there is a relevant moment, a holiday, we'll launch a holiday pop-up channel. An artist unfortunately passes, we'll make sure that we're programming that and bringing that to the forefront. And really being flexible and understanding what consumers want at that specific time. We have a dedicated research team keeping their fingers on the pulse of what's going on. So even when something happens really quickly, we can react as fast as possible, and get the content live.
Yeah, so where I was going to go, and I think, just all of us sort of working backwards from customers, an example for us where we've been able to kind of create an experience that you're referring to is we have seen, especially as customers have cut the cord through pandemic, et cetera, that it's really important to be able to offer them solutions that bring them back to some of those experiences that were more typically achieved through cable, like live television, sports, news. And so in answer to that, we've taken the fact that customers love to be able to turn on their news in the morning when they wake up, having their coffee, see what's going on in the day. And we pull in and aggregate across 20 national providers and actually hundreds of local channels. We have a single one-stop shop. You see a news icon on your home screen on Fire TV. You can go into that, drops you right into a live feed. You can customize favorites or just see the top headlines while you're brushing your teeth. And so that's just an example. It's all free ad-supported content in there. So that's a way where we're helping partners monetize by giving them another channel beyond their O&O app on the device in order to get more eyeballs, which we can get in front of customers in different and creative ways throughout our user interface.
I think what you're seeing is that the consumer has been overwhelmed by a paralyzing of choice. And I think we've all been there when we turn on the TV at home and you go to Netflix or go to any of them, and you're scrolling, and you're trying to figure out what everyone in the family is going to agree to watch. When it used to be, you turn on the TV and whatever was in the network, and that was already being programmed. And so I think you're seeing the pendulum swing back, whether it's linear fast channels or even programmed. We have the kids 24/7 channels programmed. I know does very well on Samsung TV Plus, as well as our local stations. So what we're seeing in public media is that there's been an increase in demand for the PBS local linear station feeds from all the different partners who are trying to provide a solution for consumers. And we just closed another deal with Local Now. And so more and more of these platforms want to have the local content that's relevant in a program fashion so that consumers don't have to overthink what they're going to watch.
I think that's super important because the message here is really that we talk about fast, we talk about OTT, but it's television, right? It's you go home, you sit on your couch, you turn the TV on, and you watch what's there. That's how most of us grew up. That's how TV's been operating for almost 100 years now, and users like that. They want to be in that environment. So at Samsung TV Plus, what we've done is said, okay, there's an element to be able to bring that content to the household without the need of a digital antenna, without the need of a terrestrial line of sight, without the need of fumbling with an antenna on your roof or your back of the set. You just plug in your TV and you've got content that the users are accustomed to. And I think that's an important mechanism for the engagement of the content. And we have people watch 5.5, 6 hours of TV a day, right? That's how they watch it. Yes, there's on demand. On demand's been around for 25 years. It's still a portion of the viewing, but it hasn't, supplanted linear television. That's what we're able to do. For us, we think that, that TV experience is critical. And so, we talked about news, we talked about local feeds. If you live in Los Angeles, you can watch your NBC, your ABC, and your CBS feed that's delivered to you, the local news. And if you live in New York, you'll get the New York local news. Well, we believe that where you're sitting and where you're anchored is an important place, and geography and local news for that geographical region is important. So we deliver a local feed to each and every person, whatever DMA you're in.
Okay, so Stefan, I'm gonna let you answer this last sort of round of questions, because as also a consumer, and we're all consumers of television / video / streaming / whatever, I also want to call bullshit. Okay, because the reality is, and not just your not particular comment, just general for this conversation, it is getting maddening. It's already past maddening in terms of turning on the quote unquote set, depending on the operating system or the set that I purchased or the subscription service that I subscribe to, or an MVPD or virtual MVP or whatever, to find what I want to watch. Now, in some cases, if I know what I want and there happens to be a cross-service search element, okay, let's Google our way through television, right? I'm not sure consumers truly want that, but I guess the question in there is, what is a consumer to do? How are they able to gauge? I think you're kind of saying it's maybe not about a network per se anymore, or even a station anymore, but probably a show. And once they figure out there's a show that they like or they want, and there's 6 seasons of it, and they're met with 3 or 4 different windows that they don't even know why season 3 is on another platform, how do we fix all of this? Is it going to get worse before it gets more curated better? Because right now it is just, everything's being barfed out there and people don't know how to find it and or subscribe to it or follow it. And I'm also concerned from the economic perspective that people are going to have to start cutting some subscriptions given a possible recession. It's getting harder and harder to arbitrage my viewing behaviors because I want to know, did I pay for it already or not? And where is it? How can I get it? Nobody's really helping. And with all due respect, even that last grip of the fungo bat, that television set, that user interface, isn't necessarily the best place to know where my Vivo clip is or where my Ken Burns documentary, which has its own rights issues, can be found because it's not on the PBS app that's on my Fire platform. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to.
Well, it is.
Surface
If you're a member of your
saying.
local station, it
Right.
absolutely is.
Right. But consumers are hurting, right? They don't know what they
I'll
want.
wear my CMO hat. Discovery is a freaking nightmare. When we're marketing a show, it's more than just trying to market an event and a night, because that night you're competing not only against what else is on at that given time, which could be sports, could be other shows, but you're competing against the history of film and television, which is at people's fingertips. So it's really about getting out there in a way, in a sustained effort, so that people understand that the content is available, be it on your app, throughout a longer window. Now at PBS, we solved a lot of the windowing issues with the PBS Passport service, which is a member benefit. If you donate to your local station, you get access to the library, Downton Abbey, Ken Burns, you name it. There's also other ways to access PBS content beyond the Amazon channels, beyond some of the Zumo channels, the FAST, et cetera. But again, going where the audiences are. But the point that you were just saying in the beginning, Discovery, it's a nightmare. And I look to our friends at Samsung and improving their search, what they spend a lot of time on, and Amazon spends a lot of time on. And I have to point to them. I won't pass the buck, but I will, because I think it's a technology solution that has to come so that when you actually use the microphones, ask for it actually comes up.
So I think there's a lot of different parts of your question that you're asking there in terms of mixing SVOD, TVOD, AVOD. I would say that most of this panel is representing sort of the free front of the house, top of the funnel. People just want an easy solution. Come to Samsung TV Plus, come to Fire TV. You find providers like PBS and Vivo, right? And I think the solution for the audiences that's come about in the last couple of years has been that free part, that ad-supported free part, to sort of cut through the I'm going to scroll endlessly through these, tiles on Netflix or through my apps, my SVOD apps to find the show that I want. Then it comes down to the experience, right? And how are you building that experience? And it is technology. It's how are you building that person? We talked about local news. That's an experience for somebody in a specific location. And we're doing that more and more on Zumo, for example. If you're looking at the EPG and that show that comes on 3 hours later is available as VOD, you can watch it right then, right? So it's upgrading the experience of the old school EPG. So it becomes about that experience, about personalizing that experience for the viewer, and about getting them faster to stuff they want and helping with the discovery for our partners.
So I'm going to actually do something a little different. I'm going to throw it back to Ira, because I think search and discovery, we say it together, but they're not the same thing, right? Search is when you're actively going and looking for something. Discovery is saying, I don't know what I want, and let's see what's out there.
Or I heard about something.
Yeah.
I have maybe part of the name.
Yeah. And so let me go, Google something, or let me figure out what that is. So if you're 99% of what's out in content world is not discovered. I mean, it's not searched, it's discovered. And so from a marketing perspective, I think it's on the onus of the content owner to say, I want to be searched. I want to be found. So I need to market this piece of IP to the fullest it can, to the fullest capability that I have. If you want to be discovered, I think that that's up to the platforms to say, look, here's what we have. And I think at TV Plus, what's interesting is that we try to emulate television, right? You turn on your cable box, the last channel that was playing is the first channel that's playing. We don't send you somewhere else and they have to come back to it. It emulates cable TV when you at power on. So we talked about a button. We literally have a button, the power button, that brings you to content. So UX and UI is really an important function of content discovery, and search is a function of the marketing, of the IP. And I think, we have an ad sales team that is more than happy to sell you some advertising.
I was going to say, we
Fun.
buy ads on Samsung. We buy
Excellent.
ads on Amazon. We just did it, I think, even for the last Ken Burns style of the Holocaust. But
Takashi's up
they
here
do
pimping
perform.
audience development.
That's right, for sure. All right, so
Unbelievable.
I want to give Bethany and Charlotte the
Not
last
by Zumo. I think I bought Zumo.
Yeah, you may
gentlemen. I want to give Bethany and Charlotte the last word on sort of this consumer thing, because we literally have like 2 minutes left. But you guys are in interesting positions, right? Because you're a programmer of lots of video and music stuff, which people kind of want to discover, but they also want to find as well. And you're a representative of the last sort of grip of that fungo bat, because that's when people turn on something, they're turning on the Fire platform. How do consumers win, you think, in the next couple of years, just generally and through your platforms? Because it's still pretty hard.
It's tough. As a consumer, I could admit there's room for some improvement, but I would echo something Takashi was saying about, search is for something you already know you want to watch. And at Vivo, we have the benefit of having some of the biggest stars in the world already on our platform. So maybe people aren't searching for Vivo or for Vivo Pop Video Weekly, but they're searching for Drake. They're searching for DaBaby. They're searching for all of these different artists. So we're getting people to come in that way. But discoverability is still a really big thing that we work on with our partners. And we customize it, like I was saying earlier. We worked with Zumo, who said Taylor Swift's midnight release is going to be huge on our platform. We need to get that front and center. So we worked closely with them. We worked with Takashi's team at Samsung TV Plus. We created original content with Demi Lovato, and they said, huge artist, huge opportunity. We'd love to host that exclusively on Samsung, and we promoted with them. So I think it still goes back to the right mix between the platform and the content and understanding the audience in order to surface everything to them correctly.
Yeah, I think at the beginning you mentioned what keeps you up at night, and this is definitely that. And it's not because we haven't made huge strides, and by we I mean Fire TV, but also all of us up here collectively. But there just continues to be more and more choice for customers, more and more things they can take advantage of. And I think it's right. The search and discovery is a distinction. To throw a little data behind it, we've done some internal studies that basically tell us that about a third of our customers come knowing exactly what they want to watch, about a third come with some idea, and a third no idea at all. And we need to meet all of those needs effectively and efficiently, solving the needs of those customers as well as customers like the folks up here, advertiser and partner customers. And so we do that through our UI by introducing personalization, which I think is a super important piece of it. And then also, especially for that 2/3 who have some or no idea of what they want to watch, how can we create wayfinders? How can we, sort of create a more qualified customer that would make a more efficient ROI for a partner who wants to buy a display ad, for example, and get in front of that customer as part of their journey? So we have things like the free hub, where that's full of fast content. It also could be free to me, where we recognize the entitlement that a customer has and surface content that they might be entitled to as a subscriber that somebody else wouldn't be. And so, that's back to how do we use our back-end technology to create end-to-end solutions for customers. But also, we know that customers love using voice. That's a great way for them to search. So in the spirit of what can we do, we have about over 70 partners who are integrated in voice search today, such that, search and that result would show up in a universal search, but that leaves over 100 or more that are not. And so I do think that, it is going to take all of us working together to continue to solve this problem that I think we're all acknowledging for customers, even as we're excited about the opportunities it presents.
And that gets to be the last word. So thank you for that. And thank you all. These are very smart people here. So give it up for them, please. And thank you for making time for us today in your show. So enjoy the rest of it.
Nice job.
Oh, terrific.